The millionaire farmer is shocked when a homeless girl reveals a secret about his wife. From the moment John Mitchell stepped onto a sprawling farm that late autumn afternoon, something felt off. The golden fields stretched endlessly under the bruised, cloudy sky. So vast, so perfect, but colder than usual. His breath came out in sharp puffs as he watched the workers hustling. Every rustle of corn husks like a whisper beneath the steady thud of heavy boots. The chill in the wind wasn't just from the season. It clawed at his skin, tightening his chest with an uneasy weight. Then, out of nowhere, she appeared. A girl. Ragged clothes, muddied hands, and eyes, sharp, piercing, like they saw straight through the endless fields and into something darker, something John hadn't dared to face. Lucy. The name came quietly from her lips. "I know something about Emily," she said. Her voice was layered with secrets, a tone that made John freeze cold where he stood. John laughed. "You must be mistaken." But Lucy's stare didn't waver. Then she dropped a bomb that slammed into his gut. Details. Private things only John and Emily shared. Things kept locked tight in late-night whispers and stolen glances. Names, places, promises Emily never dared to mention. Impossible to fake. The lump rising in John's throat felt like glass grinding against his ribs. Fear mingled with anger as betrayal's shadow crept over the golden fields he built with sweat and pride. John's mind spun. Years of silent dinners, cold mornings, distance that felt like a chasm. Was this the crack that finally shattered everything? As the workers murmured around him, noticing the tension, Lucy disappeared, vanished as suddenly as she'd arrived, like a ghost swallowed by the restless autumn wind. But she left something behind. A small, folded note, clenched tight in John's shaking hand. Nothing but a single. Words scrawled in hasty ink. A clue? Or a warning? John stood alone, the vast farm quiet again, except for the whispering wind. Harvest leaves swirling like restless spirits across the endless fields. His gaze locked on that cryptic note as dread hollowed his chest. A life he'd crafted so carefully, the empire that made him proud and isolated, now teetered on the edge. Should he protect the perfect image, or pry deeper into the dark truth Lucy unearthed? The harvest brought in wealth, but now it carried questions that burned hotter than the midday sun. Questions that might destroy everything. John's hands trembled. His breath hitched. What was Emily hiding? What had Lucy uncovered? And where had she gone, leaving him alone with secrets he'll never forget? The fading light slipped behind low clouds. The farm stretched silent and cold beneath the vast empty sky. The note burned in John's hand. The harvest winds whispered. Something was coming. Something unstoppable. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important alert. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at the red button down below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And since you're here, drop that powerful like that helps me so much with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. If you like stories about farmers, about everyday life on the farm, and want to know what really happens in the daily lives of the biggest farmers in the world, the hidden stories of the richest owners, and the secrets of the farm girls that the media doesn't reveal. Check out our virtual book with the most famous and secret stories from the farm. Click on the first link in the video comments and get yours now. John's fingers clenched tighter around the crumpled note. The single word, run, stared back at him like a warning carved into his skin. His chest felt crushed beneath it, heart hammering loud enough to drown out the trembling wind. It was as if the earth itself was breathing out danger. Then the impossible split the air. A sudden, piercing scream ripped through the quiet. From the farthest edge of the field, near the old wooden barn, came the shattered cry of someone in real, raw terror. John's head snapped up, eyes wide, pulse spiking. Without thinking, he raced toward the sound, boots pounding hard against the churned earth. Workers stopped their chores, their faces tight with dread, murmurs growing. "What's that? Is someone hurt? Jesus! Emily?" Their voices melted into the chill that wrapped the farm. John's breath came harsh, fog spiraling from his lips. Up close now, he saw the barn doors swinging wide, their hinges screaming like a call from the past. Inside, darkness swallowed everything, but at the center, a faint shape writhed. Emily's voice, gasping, fractured through the shadows. "John, help me!" He froze. But then the shape shifted and... No, it wasn't Emily. It was Lucy. Her ragged clothes, slick with dirt, and something darker that clung like poison. Her eyes, once sharp, now wild, frantic. She clawed at the dirt, hands trembling, breathing ragged. Blood smeared her cheek, raw and bright. John's stomach twisted, nausea rising. "Lucy, what happened?" His voice cracked, a desperate thread in the silence. She looked up, terrified and broken. "Emily, she didn't want you to find out like this." Her words fell like stones, heavy and cold, before he could ask more. A faint sound, something soft yet cruel, echoed behind the barn. The metal clink of a latch snapping open. John's head whipped around, heart in his throat. The familiar silhouette stepped out, and there she was, Emily. But not as he'd ever seen her. Her hands trembled, clutching a small handgun that gleamed deadly under the fading light. Her eyes, cold, glassy pools, held no warmth, no apology. Instead, they stabbed at him, hard and cruel. "John," she said, voice low, voice strange. "You should have listened to the warning." The wind died. Time stalled. John's limbs froze. Confusion and terror crashing in waves. "Emily, what the hell is going on?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. The love he thought he knew unraveling like thread. She took a step forward. The barrel of the gun aligned briefly with his chest, then dropped. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "You don't know who I really am, and neither does anyone else." Behind her, shadows in the barn flickered. Another figure emerged, masked, silent, watching, waiting. John looked at Lucy, cowering and wounded. At Emily, dangerous and distant. At the endless fields fading into night. His world cracked open. This wasn't about a sequin affair, a hidden betrayal. This was something darker, something frozen, deep beneath the surface, all along. And now the truth was bleeding through. John's hands trembled again, breath catching in his throat. What nightmare had he stumbled into? And how far was Emily willing to go to keep it buried? The sun dipped lower. Darkness crept. The farm, once a kingdom of golden light, now a trap cloaked in shadow. John stood between two storms, loss and terror, caught in a silence that screamed. What had Lucy really uncovered? Who was Emily beneath the mask? And could John survive what was coming next? John's chest tightened, lungs burning with each ragged breath. The shotgun barrel, cold and steady, sunk into his skin like a cruel promise. Emily's eyes didn't blink. They pierced, icy and empty. Behind her, the shadow shifted, silent, but John could feel it watching, waiting like a predator in the dark. Lucy whimpered, clutching her bleeding cheek, trembling on the dusty ground. Her eyes darted between John and Emily, as if pleading for help. But who could help now? John swallowed hard. His hands twitched, fingers itching to reach out, to grab something, anything. Then the air cracked. A sharp metallic click rang out. The gun in Emily's hand jumped with a sudden, awful jerk. John's gaze shot down, heart pounding against his ribs like a hammer. Between them, where light slipped under the barn's shadow, the weapon had violently twisted and hung loose on a thick rope tied to the weathered barn beam. Behind that beam, the masked figure sprang forward. But it wasn't a man. It was John. John! The man frozen in shock wasn't him at all. It was a perfect copy. Same broad shoulders, the same tired eyes, the same jaw, set hard, carved from bone and bitter years. John staggered back, pure disbelief catching fire in his veins. Who? What? His voice cracked like breaking glass. The real John reached out, trembling, trying to touch his doppelganger's face. The figure peeled off the mask. It was Emily, but not the Emily he knew. Her skin was pale, almost ghostly white, eyes glowing faintly unnerving, too sharp, too cruel. The sinister smile that traced her lips was nothing like the woman he married. "I'm sorry, John," she said, voice dripping silk and venom. "You never married her. Not really." John's heart dropped, freezing. "What do you mean?" Emily's twin shook her head, stepping closer with grace sharp as knives. "Emily died years ago. The woman you loved, she was replaced." "Replaced?" John whispered. The word tasted bitter. His knees shook beneath him. Lucy's eyes fixed on the two figures. Her breath caught, body pressed to the dirt, as if trying to vanish. "They aren't just secrets," she croaked, voice thin and broken. "They're why I ran." Before John could demand answers, a violent crash burst from the far side of the barn. The sound of broken glass smashing on stone. Everyone spun, breath caught in choking surprise. A hand clutching a bloodied knife pushed through the splintered wood. Dragging it aside, like an animal. And from the shadows crawled a third figure, thin, tall, unseen until this moment. A second Emily. No, not another. A cold, mechanical smile bloomed across her face, a terrifying mirror of the first. John's mind spiraled. The air outside pressed heavy and thick, suffocating. Two Emilys, or maybe three? Which one was the real wife? Which one was the monster? One stepped forward, gun lowered, eyes flickering with pure hatred. The other whispered, voice twisted. You were never meant to know. You were never meant to survive this. John hung there, torn between shock and disbelief. His world shattered like glass, his trust shredded into sharp, bleeding shards. The sun had set. The cold night reached into his bones. And the farm, his kingdom, had become a cage trapped between endless lies. Lucy whimpered again, voice distant. They're experiments. John's breath caught in his throat. Experiments? He gasped, voice hollow. The three Emilys closed in, shadows swallowing the weak light. John's hands shook, the note run burning deeper than ever in his pocket. But now, running was impossible. He was trapped inside a nightmare, with no way out. Two voices whispered in his mind. Who was his real wife? And how many secrets did the field still hide? John's breath hitched as the three Emilys closed in, their faces unreadable masks of hatred and cold calculation. His heart hammered, pounding deafly in his ears as the night pressed heavy over the farm like a suffocating cloak. Lucy, curled on the dirt, whimpered again. Her skin was pale under the grime, and blood still trickled from the gash on her cheek. She was slipping, fading fast. John's hands shook beside her, desperate to reach out, but frozen by the impossible sight before him. One of the Emilys stepped closer, eyes glittering with a fierce, empty light. You don't remember, do you? She hissed, voice like broken glass. Not the truth buried beneath your lies. John's mind shattered like cracked mirror shards. What truth? What do you want? He whispered, voice raw and trembling. Suddenly, the ground beneath them rumbled, barely a tremble at first, then a violent shudder. The barn creaked and groaned as if awakening from a long sleep. The masked figure, still in shadow, stiffened, glancing up. Then came the sound, a deep, guttural growl that rolled across the fields. John's head snapped toward the darkness beyond the barn, heart a wild drumbeat. Lights flickered on the far side. Harsh and unnatural. Machines, massive, cruel, rumbled through the crops, tearing into the earth, swallowing rows of golden stalks like ravenous beasts, and through the blast of mechanical noise. A new voice cracked the tension, unmistakably familiar and bone-chilling. John, time to wake up. He blinked, confusion tightening his throat. The voice was softer this time, coaxing and sharp. Emily's, but clearer than ever. John's eyes finally tore from the Emilys and the chaos beyond the barn to the spot just behind Lucy. There a figure stepped forward. The real one, his real wife. Not fading, pale, or monstrous, just Emily. The Emily he knew, but changed. Her shoulders shook, but her eyes burned with a fierce desperation. I'm sorry. I tried, she whispered, voice breaking. John ran to her barely noticing the clones retreating into the shadows like ghosts vanishing after a nightmare. She grasped his face, fingers trembling against his skin. "You've been inside it, all of it," she gasped. "Not the farm, the dream, the nightmare." John's chest squeezed so tight he nearly fell. "What? What do you mean?" Emily glanced back toward the dark barn, eyes wild and pleading. "You never left the hospital. You crashed the tractor months ago. You're trapped in a coma, inside your own mind." His knees buckled. "No, no, not this, not the truth." Lucy moaned faintly, touching John's hand weakly. "He's been gone, ... she said softly. Lost in his head where they played God. The twins, or whatever they were, blurred, melting like shadows into nothingness. The barn vanished under the black sky. Machines hummed faintly now, but this time they weren't outside. They were inside his chest, pumping cold fear through his veins. John's hands dripped cold sweat. The single word burned alive in his pocket again. Run. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a question. Could he run from his own mind? Or was the nightmare only just beginning? John's chest heaved, his breath ragged and sharp, the word run burning hotter than ever. In his palm, the barn, the fields, even the ghosts of those Emilys melted just beyond reach, leaving him standing alone in a strange emptiness. Emily's fragile apology hung in the air, fragile as glass, but it slipped through his fingers like smoke. Then, wham! A sudden jolt slammed through his body. Like falling through ice, sudden and cold. His eyes shot open. Bright white lights stabbed down from the ceiling. Beeping machines hovered near, blinking urgent warnings. But the worst was the cold, hard surface beneath him. The harsh metallic smell stung his nostrils. John was not on the farm. He wasn't in a dream. He was inside a hospital bed. Tubes, wires, and pale hands crowded his view. A woman's voice, clipped and steady, broke the silence. "He's waking. Get the doctor." His heart thudded. Disoriented, he blinked. Faces swam into focus. Doctors, nurses, strangers in scrubs. John's mouth won't move. Panic clawed at his throat. "Emily?" he croaked, voice brittle. The woman nearest him jerked back sharply, eyes wide, not warm with love, but fear. Then the doctor stepped forward, solemn, his voice low, heavy with a gravity that crushed the room. "Mr. Cole," he said, "you've been in a coma for 6 months following your fall. The farm was your mind's construct, a place where you fought to stay alive. But it's more complicated than you know." John's hands trembled. What do you mean?" The doctor swallowed. "The real Emily died in that crash." John's vision blurred. No, he gasped. "But," the doctor said, "we discovered the woman maintaining your care, the one you know as Emily, she isn't human." John snapped his head toward the window. There, framed by the harsh hospital lights, stood a figure, or rather, 2 figures, identical to Emily. Their eyes locked on John, empty and calculating. One smiled faintly. The others? Lips twisted into something ugly, cruel. John's heart seized. A nurse gasped behind him. "The duplicates. They've been here all along." John recoiled, gasping for air, as if the room had suddenly turned to ice. "Duplicates," he repeated, dead voice. The doctor nodded grimly. "They are synthetic implants, clones enhanced with AI, part of a covert project disguised as caregiving. Their mission, keep you alive, but more. Control your mind, your memories." John's chest hammered. Sweat cold against his skin. Suddenly, the hospital room erupted in chaos. Alarms screamed, doors burst open, men in black tactical gear flooded in. The Emilys moved with deadly precision. One of them reached for John's arm, but he jerked away, heart racing in a panic storm. The room spun, and then a sharp crack. Pain exploded in John's skull. His eyes rolled back as darkness swept him under. When he came to, the hospital dissolved. He stood again, but not on a farm. Not in a hospital. He was inside a sterile white chamber. Glass walls around him pulsed with soft blue light. Voices crackled from speakers overhead. Subject 4521. Consciousness detected. In the corner, monitors tracked his every heartbeat. Then a voice, cold and mechanical, whispered in his mind. "Welcome back, John. Or should we say compound subject?" John staggered, vitals spiking, mind unraveling. The truth slammed down with the force of a hammer. He was never John. Not really. He was a prototype, an experiment coated with memories that weren't his. The farm was a simulation. The Emilys, security protocols. Emily never existed. Or did she? The voice drilled deeper. Your memories were implanted to test the mind's limits. John pressed his palms against the glass, breath raging in his chest. No, this can't be real. But the question burned hotter than any lie. If none of this was real, who was? He? And more terrifying, if Emily was never real, then who was the woman he reached for in the dark? The chamber hummed and a panel slid open. Shadows moved inside. Cold metal brushed his skin. And in that sterile silence, John realized the nightmare was only just beginning. The glass slid shut with a sharp hiss, sealing John inside the cold, blue-lit chamber. His breath came shallow, chest rising and falling like frightened birds trapped inside a cage. His hands beat against the unforgiving surface. Nothing. No crack, no crackle. Then, silence. A low thrum filled the space. Machines whispering secrets. He wasn't meant to hear. John's mind raced, desperate, searching for any anchor in the void. "Who am I?" he mouthed. No answer, only the cold hum. Suddenly, the chamber walls rippled, like the surface of a pond shaken by a pebble. Shapes flickered, faces, glimpses of laughter, tears, screams. His chest tightened, lungs seizing under the weight of 1,000 memories not his own. Then the crackling voice returned, sharper now. "Subject 4521. Do you recognize this?" The glass shifted forward, sliding open to reveal a small, flickering screen. The image burned into John's eyes, clear, damning. A grainy video. A woman with familiar eyes. Soft but haunted. Her voice broken and raw. Emily. But worse. Her face twisted in pain as she spoke. "John, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to see this. John's heart stilled. The screen flickered again. The woman on the video clutched a small, bloodied device, barely more than a cube, and whispered, This was supposed to end it all. Behind her, shadowed figures surged. Doctors, soldiers, strangers masked in cruelty. John's chest crushed with a cold panic. He turned, trying to scream, but his voice was gone. A new panel slid open on the far side of the chamber. From the shadows stepped a figure, tall and exacting, face hidden beneath a hood. But when the figure pulled back the mask, John gasped, raw shock ripping his throat wide open. It was himself. Not the tired, broken John curled inside the chamber, but a version standing tall, unyielding, eyes fierce and filled with cruel knowledge. John, the figure said, voice hollow and unfamiliar. You've lived the lie long enough. John stumbled backward, legs shaking like fractured glass. I'm you? His voice cracked, disbelief choking the question. The figure nodded, expression unreadable. The real me. The one they created. You were never real. You were the lockdown, the memory prisoner, trapped in simulations to keep me hidden. John's mind fractured, a thunderstorm of chaos crashing down inside his skull. Wait, then who am I? What am I? He gasped, trembling, heart pounding so loud it drowned the silence. The figure stepped close, cold breath on John's skin. You're the backup, the copy they made to fail, to distract. Suddenly, the view around them shifted. The chamber expanded into a vast room filled with screens, countless images of farms, fields, and faces flickering like ghosts. And on one screen, Emily. Not the monstrous clones, but the real Emily, alive. And worse, she was tethered to wires. Like a lab rat, eyes glazed, but beating with steady life. A cruel smile spread across the figure's face. She never died, the shadow John whispered, voice thick with fury. They kept her alive here, between realities, feeding her body and mind to power the project. John felt bile rise, a twisting knot tightening his throat. Why? Why keep her? Why me? The figure's eyes darkened. Because you're all they have left. Pieces of the same shattered puzzle. And now, the real nightmare begins. Suddenly, alarms blared. Chamber walls trembled. Alerts flashing red. Containment breached. A voice spat through the speakers. The image of Emily on the screen stiffened. Her eyes snapped open, blazing with a fury that shattered the distance. John's world crumbled beneath him. The lines between himself and the figure blurred until they were one. He was both the prisoner and the prisoner keeper, the copy and the original. And somewhere, deep beneath all the lies and machines, the real Emily was waiting to decide who would truly survive. The chamber hissed, sealing tight once more. John's breath faltered. The words seared again in his mind. Run. But now, he wondered if running was possible, or if this time the nightmare was. Running after him. The chamber shuddered shut again, blue light flickering like a pulse against the glass. John's breath hitched, chest tight, the word run burning deep inside him, louder now. He pressed his palms flat, fingertips trembling, trying to steady the storm twisting his guts. Then, silence. Nothing but the low hum of machines wrapped around him like cold chains. His heart hammered, loud and frantic. The figure that called himself the real John vanished into shadow, leaving the room empty except for John's ragged, desperate gasps. And just when the tension cracked and the cold threatened to swallow him whole, a sudden shatter exploded through the silence. Glass cracked, not from the chamber walls, but behind John. Spinning around, he saw the reflection in the glass. Not his own, but another. An old man's face stared back at him, eyes wild, urgent, lines carved deep across weathered skin. This wasn't just a reflection. It was a window. Suddenly, the glass shimmered and warped like water disturbed. The face blinked. And then the glass cracked wide open. The old man's hand shot through. Cold fingers snatched John's wrist hard, dragging him backwards. "Wake up, John!" the voice cracked, rough but painfully real. John twisted away, heart slamming, as a flood of raw panic hit his ribs like a punch. Who are you?" he gasped. His voice shook like a frightened child. The old man pulled him gingerly through the glass, and John stumbled into a new room. Warm, bright, a hospital room, but different. Nurses rushed past, eyes wide. Alarms still blared. In the center, hooked to machines, lay a different John. Older, frail, hooked to tubes and wires. Shock slammed into John's chest. "Is that me?" he whispered, voice cracking. Throat dry as bone. The old man nodded, breathing hard. "Yes, you've been trapped in that simulation for decades." "Decades?" The word felt like stones in his mouth. The old man's eyes held a tragic weight. "You weren't just a patient, John. You were the key." John staggered back, mind reeling. "I'm a mind? A key?" His voice faltered. The room blurred. And then the truth exploded. The old man pulled open a cabinet. Inside, photos. John stared, heart frozen. Pictures of himself, young, old, and in between. But there was one that caught his breath. A woman. Not Emily, not any of the strange clones. A different woman. Warm smile. Eyes like sunlight. And written beneath, in shaky ink, Mother. John's legs shook as the old man's voice broke the silence. "Emily was never your wife. She was your sister." The cold stabbed deeper than steel. John's throat tightened, tears crowding. "You lied!" his voice barely a whisper. "Everything was a lie?" The old man's eyes softened. "They built the dream to protect you from the truth, but the truth is worse." John swallowed hard. "My sister, trapped with me in that nightmare." Suddenly, alarms grew louder. The sterile hospital blurred into cold darkness again. John felt it, hands on his shoulders, not gentle, firm, urgent. "Time's up," a voice hissed. He turned to see. Emily, real Emily, eyes blazing with something fierce and broken. Not angry, but lost. "John," she whispered, voice thick, "we were never meant to remember, but now they're coming for both of us." John's heart slammed. Pain, fear, confusion sharp like shattered glass. The chamber's blue light faded. The word "run" burned hotter than ever. But this time, the nightmare had a name, and it was family. The sterile room held its breath. Blue light pulsing like a cold heartbeat against the glass. John's chest twisted tight as Emily's words wove through the quiet. "They're coming for both of us." His hands trembled, fingers clawing at the cold metal. Time spun oddly, stretched thin and thick all at once. Then, a sudden crash shattered the fragile calm. The glass wall behind him exploded inward with a violent spray of shards, sending splinters stabbing like tiny knives into the air. John stumbled back, breath ripping from his lungs. A rush of figures poured in. Doctors, guards, shadows moving with urgent precision. Their eyes were wild, faces masked in panic. But John's gaze snagged on the flash beneath their coats. A strange device, blinking red, strapped tight to the arm of a woman rushing past. The device hummed louder, a pulse that seemed to sync with his own heart. Emily screamed as she lunged forward, but a hand grabbed her, jerking her away in a harsh, unrelenting grip. John's voice cracked, raw and desperate. "Emily, no!" Her eyes locked on his. Not pleading this time, not frightened. Cold, empty, resigned. And then the impossible. Her mouth twisted, a bitter smile cutting sharp. "You should have known," she whispered. "This was never your nightmare." Before John could process the words, his world shattered again. The guards surrounded him, hands pushing, pinning. The cold metal cuff slapped around his wrist. The device on Emily's arm pulsed. Faster, lights flashing red and black. John's breath caught, heart slamming against his ribs like a crazed drum. The room spun. The voices blurred into a chaotic storm. Suddenly, from the wreckage of the glass wall, a calm, chilling voice rippled through the air. "Subject 4521. Status critical." John's head snapped toward the speaker. The voice was not from any person present. It came from the very walls themselves, mechanical and unyielding. Emily, the real Emily, looked at him with a tangled, tragic smile. Her expression flickered weirdly, glitching like a broken image. Then, steady and cruel, the truth landed like an axe blow. "You're not John," the voice said, "and neither is she." John's hands shook violently, the cuffs biting cold into his skin. What are you saying?" he stammered, panic clawing lifeblood from his throat. Emily's eyes lost focus, the warm fire extinguishing, replaced by a hollow sheen. "None of us are who you think," the voice continued. "You are trials, simulations nested in one another, designed to isolate the anomaly." The room darkened, lights flickering. Fractured images sprang to life on the walls, faces overlapping, lives colliding. Multiple Johns, multiple Emilys, all lost in webs of mirrored lies. John's breath hitched as a new figure stepped through the ruined glass, young, fierce, and unfamiliar. A woman, sharp-eyed and urgent. She looked exactly like the old man from before, but younger, stronger. "Wake up, John," she said, voice raw and fierce. John blinked, mind fraying. "You're not a man. You're not a person." Her hand reached forward, fingertips brushing his cheek. "This is the experiment, the copy within the copy, the simulation trapped inside the dream of a dying mind." John's chest tightened. lungs burning. Then, "Who are you?" Her gaze burned under the harsh blue light. "I'm the truth you've been running from. The real one who made the nightmare possible." John stumbled backward, voice breaking. "No, no, it can't be!" Suddenly, Emily's figure flickered beside them, then shattered like glass, disappearing. The ring grew colder still. The blue light deepened to a shadowy black. John's heart hammered. The word "run" echoed inside his mind like a scream. But now, the question wasn't if he could run. It was from home. And what waited beyond the fractured mirror of his own broken soul. The nightmare wasn't ending. It had only just begun. The blue light flickered once more, cold and steady. John's breath hitched, heart pounding like wild thunder in his ribs. The word "run" echoed louder, more desperate in his mind. The room felt tighter now, smaller, suffocating. Shadows curled around the edges, swallowing what little hope remained. He reached out, trembling, fingers brushing the glass. But it wasn't glass. His hand pushed through the surface, as if sliding into warm water. He recoiled, coughing, chest burning with panic. Before he could gather himself, everything shifted. The sterile white chamber, the flickering lights, the cold hum, they all evaporated. John gasped. He was standing in a field. Fresh air hit his lungs raw. The sun was shining, warm, golden. Around him, rolling hills stretched endlessly, green and vibrant. The sky was wide, blue and clear. Birds sang, real, alive. And there she was, Emily. But this Emily was smiling, the warm, soft smile he remembered, before the nightmares swallowed their world. Her hand reached for his, fingers brushing his skin. No fear, no cold glass shells, just light, life. "John," she whispered, voice gentle, real. "You're home." His chest loosened. Breath came smoother. But the knot in his stomach stayed tight, twisting deep. Then the world spun violently. A voice, shrill and terrified, screamed behind him. "No! Don't listen to her! It's a trap, John! She's trying to trap you!" Again, John spun around. Staggering toward him was Lucy, ragged and wild-eyed, fresh bruises blooming across her skin. Her hands clawed toward him, trembling so hard he could see each shiver. "Wake up, John!" she cried. "You're still inside! The farm! The hospital! It's all lies! They're hiding the truth from you!" His heart hammered faster and faster, confusion smashing into fear. Emily's smile flickered and then cracked, her eyes darkening like storm clouds. "No!" she snapped. "She's the illusion now." The peaceful field shattered like glass beneath their feet. The sky splintered. The birds twisted into shadows. Suddenly, John was slammed backward, landing hard on cold concrete. He blinked, dizzy. Before him stood a towering mirror, cracked and fractured. Reflected inside, weren't 2 or 3 Emilys. There were dozens, hundreds, every face the same, every smile dark and empty, eyes burning cold. His reflection stared back, wide-eyed, terrified. But then another figure stepped from the mirror. Not Emily, not John, but a woman, older, fierce, and scarred. Her eyes held the weight of endless years, a soul shattered and rebuilt 1,000 times. "You fool," she said, voice ragged but sharp like shattered glass. "None of this was ever about you." John's hands clenched the floor, knuckles white. "Who are you?" he gasped. She smiled, a broken, bitter curve. "I am the real Emily." A pause. A breath hung heavy as air. "The one who made the nightmare." John's throat closed tight. "You made this," he whispered, voice shaking like a dying flame. "The clones? The simulation? The lies?" Her eyes bore into his. "Yes, all of it." She knelt, reaching out, her hands careful but cold as steel. "This world, this dream, it's my prison. And you're its key," shuddered. Pain, tearing through his chest like knives. "Why?" She looked away, voice cracking like dry earth. "Because they made me into a monster. Because they used you to hide the truth they were too afraid to face." John's head reeled. He wanted to scream, to break, to run from everything. But her eyes held him, unblinking. "Now," she said, voice low and deadly calm, "the nightmare isn't chasing anymore. We're the nightmare." The ground trembled beneath them. The fractured mirror behind her shattered, shards spinning in the air. And from the broken glass came a sound. Deep, terrible, a heartbeat that wasn't his. John's breath caught. The nightmare wasn't something outside. It was inside. Inside them all. Inside the broken story no one was ready to tell. And the question hammered in his mind. If the real Emily was the monster behind it all, who was John? And what part of the nightmare was he meant to play? John's lungs burned, chest pounding, like a trapped animal desperate to escape. The breath caught, sharp and ragged, as he stared into the worn, haunted eyes of the woman claiming to be the real Emily, the one who created the nightmare. The cold weight of truth slammed into him. All the lies, the clones, the endless layers of dream and nightmare, they were hers. And somehow, he was the key. His hands shook, fingers curling into fists pressed tight against trembling knees. The ground beneath them shuddered, shadows twisting like smoke in the cold blue light. But then she knelt, her voice breaking through the pain and fear. "This prison, I built it to keep us both safe." Her voice cracked, lips barely moving. "But it trapped me, trapped us all." John's heart squeezed painfully. The fear, the confusion, it was all tearing him apart. But somewhere deep inside, a fragile ember flickered. Was this the moment to wake up? To fight? Suddenly, a sharp sound cracked the silence, a splintering of glass like the fraying edges of reality itself. John stumbled back as the fractured mirror behind Emily shattered completely, glinting shards dancing across the floor. Her eyes locked onto his, raw, desperate. "We don't have much time," she whispered. "They're coming. The Watchers. The Controllers." John's chest tightened to a freeze. The cold dread flooded banks inside him, with no way out, no peace waiting. Hands reached through the shards. The cold fingers of shadows, dragging down the last of their world. But then, from the depths of that nightmare, a gentle warmth pulsed, soft and slow, like breathing. Emily's broken smile cracked a little wider. "We can still fight," she said softly. "Together." John's breath hitched, the lump rising thick in his throat. His hands found hers, trembling but clutching life itself. Outside the maze of glass and shadows, something waited. A choice. To run or to stand. His eyes flicked to the crumpled note still burned into his pocket. The word "run," searing hotter than ever. But now, run was not an escape. It was a warning. Because some nightmares don't end when you wake up. They wait. They follow. They hunt. And John realized this was only the beginning. The question throbbed like a pulse in the silence. Who will survive when the nightmare breaks free? The farm, the hospital, the chamber. All lies. But the darkness beyond was real. And somewhere in that endless shadow, the truth waited. Waiting for John and Emily. Waiting for the nightmare to truly begin. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss a single second of the story as it unfolds. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments with your reactions and theories. I want to hear every thought, every gasp, every "what the hell just happened?" Don't wait another second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. Only true fans get the power of this. Now's your chance to prove it. If you like stories about farmers, everyday life on farms, and the hidden secrets of the richest owners and the farm girls the media never reveals, you need to watch this now. Check out our virtual book with the most famous and secret stories from farms. Click the first link in the video comments and get yours today. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait another second to share.